Here's a tough question for you. What if the very things that made you successful, say, 5 years ago, are actually the things holding you back now?
Hmm.
You hit that wall, that plateau, and you start to realize maybe that real growth stalls when you ignore those hidden gaps. Things like overlooked problems, priorities that aren't quite right anymore, unspoken issues.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're looking at some really insightful source material here. And it's not just about, avoiding burnout. It's really about finding where your own influence or maybe your organization structure has these subtle weak spots.
Weak spots that stop you from growing sustainably.
Exactly. Stops that expansion that you're aiming for.
So today we're doing a deep dive into what this material calls a blueprint for continuous growth and lasting influence. The mission here is to give you, our listeners, a kind of strategic lifeline. Not just to survive, but to make sure your influence actually grows and lasts by tackling those hidden roadblocks.
And the diagnosis in this source material is, well, it's fascinating. It suggests that if things feel stuck, it's rarely just a technical problem. It's probably not a lack of skill or market insight.
So what is it then?
The real breaks are often hidden. Things like spiritual blind spots, maybe deep psychological habits, cultural norms you don't even notice, and crucially, systems and incentives that actually reward the quick fix over real long-term development.
Okay, so before we even get to the how-to, the blueprint itself, it seems like it grounds everything in a specific value system first. It talks about growth not just as management, but as like holistic spiritual formation
Mhm.
and influence as a sacred responsibility. Why start there? Why is that reframing so important?
Well, it basically builds the foundation for everything else. It's a moral and practical architecture. If you skip this part, the rest just becomes, flimsy self-help tactics that fall apart under pressure.
Right.
There are three core ideas here. The first is imago Dei, the image of God. Practically, what that means is seeing leadership as stewardship. You're caring for people who have inherent divine dignity. You're not just managing human resources or worse, exploiting talent for the next quarterly report.
And when you actually treat people that way,
You build trust. You build loyalty. Retention goes up. It's practical.
and the second conviction mentioned is sanctification as process. The idea that growth takes time, it's cooperative.
Exactly. It's not a one and done achievement. It's more like a marathon, and you need others, you need rhythm. It's a process.
Okay, and the third one, Missio Dei.
Right, Missio Dei, or God's mission. This one really shifts the goalposts away from just personal success or fame. It says influence is truly meaningful only when it connects to God's larger work of restoration in the world
Restoration like justice, reconciliation.
and holistic flourishing. The Hebrew word shalom captures it well. It's about making things whole.
Okay, but how do you actually do shalom? If I'm running a company or leading a team, what's the real difference between an organization chasing prestige versus one trying to build shalom, practically speaking?
The metrics change completely. That's the key. A prestige-focused outfit measures what? PR hits, awards, maybe just raw revenue.
Yeah, things you can easily count.
Right. But a shalom-driven organization measures things like community impact, positive systemic change it's contributing to, the actual well-being and growth of its own people.
Mm.
You shift from just looking successful to actually building something durable and restorative. That's the why that has to anchor the practical what.
Got it. So that brings us to the what then, these hidden gaps that can trip up even the best leaders and plans. The first one they identify is really personal, but it has huge organizational consequences. The identity gap.
Yes, this is huge. It's basically an unresolved sense of self-worth, often tied entirely to performance. Or maybe driven by a deep fear of failure. The source calls it brittle leadership.
Brittle, meaning it breaks easily under pressure.
Exactly. If your value as a person feels like it equals your latest results, you lead from a place of insecurity, of anxiety.
They used a pastoral example that really highlighted this.
Yeah, it's a powerful contrast. Imagine a pastor whose sense of worth is directly tied to Sunday attendance numbers.
Okay.
They'll inevitably chase those numbers, maybe compromising depth for width, making reactive choices based on weekly fluctuations. It's unstable. Versus
Right.
a pastor who leads from a place of confidence, anchored in their identity as, say, a beloved child of God sent to serve. That kind of leader has resilience. That inner security allows for calculated risks, for honesty about failures, for patience. It's just much more durable than leading from fear.
So if identity is the deep root, then stability needs ongoing work. That leads us to the next gap, the rhythm gap. This sounds more operational, like literally not having sustainable rhythms of work and rest.
It is operational, but it's deeply connected to identity, too. It's about lacking those essential spiritual and, frankly, physical rest rhythms. This leads to chronic fatigue, burnout, and that short-term reactivity we talked about.
We've all seen it, right? The leader who boasts about skipping vacations and then makes terrible, impulsive decisions on a Monday morning.
Absolutely. And this isn't just, soft HR stuff. The source makes it clear this is a productivity issue. They give an example of a CEO who brought in no meeting Fridays.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Right, for deep work. And they also really prioritized Sabbath rest for their senior team. The result, they actually tracked improvements in creativity and, importantly, retention. You can't sustain high performance if you don't build in maintenance.
Okay, so personal maintenance rhythms, that makes sense. But what if the problem isn't just personal habits? What if the whole organization is set up in a way that demands constant exhaustion? That sounds like the structural or systemic gap.
Yes, and this one is often the sneakiest. It's probably the most overlooked saboteur of long-term vision.
Why is it so sneaky?
Because it feels normal. It's the misalignment, where the official incentives, the metrics, the funding cycles, how people get promoted, they all reward short-term output, even if the stated mission is about long-term formation or impact.
So the structure itself undermines the vision.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Think about a nonprofit funded entirely by 12-month grants. Those grant cycles structurally incentivize showing quick, measurable results within that year.
Right.
Even if the real lasting community change they want to create actually takes 3, 5, maybe 10 years of deep relationship building and formation, the funding architecture actively works against the deeper mission.
So you're saying the system rewards busyness over actual progress towards the strategic goal.
You get the behavior you reward,
Yeah.
always, not the behavior you say you want. And that leads us to the final gap they identify, feedback poverty.
Feedback poverty, that sounds like, well, lack of learning, maybe
Well-
rooted in a lack of humility. What's the real damage from this one?
The cost is huge. It's
Yeah.
basically repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And eventually you just start thinking those mistakes are unavoidable, like they're just part of the landscape. If you're not actively building in disciplined learning loops like proper after-action reviews or getting honest 360-degree feedback, you're essentially choosing stagnation. You simply can't improve if you're unwilling to look honestly at what's not working.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problems. Identity, rhythm, structure, feedback. Now, how does this blueprint actually help us fix them? Let's start with that deep one, the identity gap. Pillar 1 is called identity information, and they mention something called the identity litany.
Yeah, the core idea here is that lasting change, real transformation, has to flow from who you are in your core identity, not just what you do. It's about shifting from performance-based worth to secure identity.
And the practical tool.
It's surprisingly simple, but powerful. A daily anchor practice. Maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes of quiet reflection, maybe meditating on specific scripture passages that reinforce your core identity, like those in Christ texts in the New Testament. The litany idea is about intentionally replacing the lies you might believe my worth depends on my success with foundational truths. I am loved, I serve from acceptance, not for acceptance.
Okay, let me push back gently here. For a super busy founder or an executive under immense pressure, is 15 minutes focusing on identity really a better use of time than, say, diving into that urgent Q3 financial report or handling a critical client issue? How do you sell that trade-off?
That's a fair question. It's not about ignoring the P&L report. It's about ensuring that when you do look at the P&L, you're not doing it from a place of panic or desperation. Think of it this way. The 15 minutes invested in anchoring your identity is an investment in the quality of your decision-making for the rest of the day. If your identity is shaky and tied to results, a bad P&L report feels like a personal failure, a life or death threat. That leads to reactive, often poor choices.
Right.
But if you approach that same report from a place of secure identity, you can see the numbers clearly, analyze them with perspective and patience, and make strategically sound judgments, even if the news is bad. So the trade-off isn't activity versus reflection. It's panic activity versus clear-headed, effective action.
That definitely reframes the value. Okay, moving on. Pillar 4 tackles the relational gaps through apprenticeship and multiplication. This sounds like that classic leadership principle from 2 Timothy 2.2, faithful leaders developing other leaders.
Exactly. It's about intentionally reproducing leadership. The practical side involves things like setting up a consistent 1.1 mentoring rhythm, maybe weekly for a few months to start, then monthly.
But mentoring can sometimes just be talking, right? What makes it effective? Multiplication.
That's the key distinction. It's not just coffee chats.
Mhm.
The crucial part is delegating real, meaningful responsibility and then providing ongoing coaching and support as they take it on. You have to actually empower people.
So legacy isn't about you being indispensable?
No, legacy is built when the leaders you've poured into can thrive and carry the mission forward without you having to be there. If the whole thing falls apart the moment you step away, you haven't multiplied anything. You've just built a monument to yourself.
Ouch. That's convicting. Okay, and then to fix that feedback poverty gap, we have pillar 5, feedback loops and honest appraisal. Getting disciplined about learning.
Yes. We need to make honest assessment and correction normal, not scary or taboo. The source highlights 3 key practices here.
What are they?
1, regular 360-degree feedback, getting input from superiors, peers, direct reports, maybe even external stakeholders. 2, consistent after-action reviews, or AARs, after significant projects or events. And the focus must be on learning, not blame.
Learning, not blame. That sounds easier said than done.
It takes discipline. And the third practice is using things like red team exercises.
Red team. Like in the military.
Sort of. You intentionally invite trusted critics, people you know will be honest, and poke holes to stress test your plans before you launch them. Find the weaknesses internally before the market finds them for you.
Okay, walk me through an AAR that's focused on learning, not blame. What do those first 5 minutes actually look like in a meeting room?
It usually starts with a clear, agreed-upon structure and some specific questions. Like, okay, team, what did we set out to achieve here? What was the intended result? Then, what actually happened? Let's be objective. Then, the crucial one, why did it happen? What factors contributed? And finally, based on that, what will we do differently next time? What specific actions will we take?
And the tone is key, I imagine.
Absolutely. The whole conversation needs to be depersonalized. You focus on the process, the system, the circumstances. If a target was missed, the question isn't whose fault is this, but rather what in the system or the plan or the environment made it difficult for us to succeed? Did we set someone up to fail?
That shifts the focus dramatically.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the diagnosis, we have the pillars for fixing the gaps. How do we actually start? Frameworks are great, but people need a roadmap. The source offers a 90-day cycle, right?
Yes, the 90-day cycle is designed as the practical on-ramp. It makes it feel manageable.
So how does it break down?
Roughly like this. Month 1 is about laying the foundation again. Clarify your core identity, revisit your mission statement, and set just 1 or 2 really achievable spiritual formation goals for yourself.
Okay, month 1, foundations. What about month 2?
Month 2 is about implementation. Start putting those new rhythms into practice, the ones you identified in month 1. And this is also when you initiate those first apprenticeship pairings. Start small.
Month 3 is the initial test and refine phase. Run your first proper feedback loop, maybe a mini AAR, on how the first 60 days went. Look at any early indicators, qualitative or quantitative, what's working, what's not, and then adjust the plan for the next 90 days. It's iterative.
They also provide a starter checklist for those first 90 days. It seems almost too simple. Things like rewrite your mission statement, identify 1 identity lie, set 2 rhythms, start 1 apprenticeship. What's the biggest pitfall people hit in, say, month 2 when they try to implement this? Where does it usually go wrong?
That's a great question. The single biggest failure point is almost always overcommitment.
Trying to do too much too soon.
Exactly. People get fired up, which is great, but then they confuse that initial enthusiasm with long-term sustainable capacity. They try to launch like a daily hour of Bible study, a perfect weekly Sabbath, and start mentoring 3 people all at once.
And then they crash and burn by week 3.
Pretty much. The blueprint stresses setting 2 sustainable rhythms, not 2 heroic ones. If you commit to, say, a consistent 15 minutes of scripture reflection daily and protecting a 24-hour period for rest weekly, that's actually achievable for most people. Start there. Build consistency before you build intensity.
That's really crucial advice, sustainability over initial splash. Okay, let's talk measurement. If we're serious about formation and these deeper goals, the standard business KPIs probably won't tell the whole story, right? We need what the source calls kingdom metrics.
Yes, this is absolutely vital, especially for closing that structural gap we talked about. You have to measure what actually matters for the mission. The idea is to balance measurement. You track your primary, often qualitative leading indicators. These are the kingdom markers alongside your secondary, often quantitative lagging operational indicators.
Okay, leading versus lagging. Can you give a concrete example of how that balance looks in practice?
Sure. Let's say a primary leading kingdom marker is number of new leaders developed and deployed, or maybe consistent adherence to team spiritual disciplines. That tells you about the health of the roots, the formation happening.
Got it. Leading indicators of future health?
Right. The corresponding lagging operational indicator might be something like staff retention rate or average time to fill a senior leadership vacancy. These measure the results, the health of the branches, which often lag behind the root health.
So you need both.
You need both. You track things like stories of reconciliation within the team, maybe increased patients reported in performance reviews, qualitative, leading, while also keeping an eye on financial stability or the rate at which your model replicates, quantitative, lagging. The key is that the metrics have to genuinely reward the formation you claim to value, not just the easily countable activity. Otherwise, the system will inevitably pull you back towards rewarding short-term output.
It seems like this whole blueprint really boils down to intentionally fixing those hidden gaps in our identity, our rhythms, our structures through very deliberate practices, spiritual grounding, multiplying leaders, and creating those disciplined learning loops.
That's it exactly. It's definitely not easy work. It requires intentionality and consistency. But the promise is that it leads to durable, sustainable influence and growth, not just flashes in the pan.
And you mentioned there's a kind of historical case study that embodies this whole approach.
Yeah, the source points to the story of Nehemiah in the Hebrew Bible as a fantastic example of this integrated blueprint in action. He wasn't just a project manager rebuilding a wall.
How so?
Well, think about his process. He started with grieving and praying, that's grounding his identity, acknowledging his dependence. Then he went and assessed the reality on the ground, the brokenness, and made a clear plan that's vision and honest appraisal. Then he recruited, inspired, and empowered the people to do the work, assigning specific sections of the wall that's multiplication and delegation. And crucially, after the wall was built, he didn't just stop. He worked to renew the covenant, the community's core identity and structures, ensuring long-term sustainability.
So identity, appraisal, multiplication, and structure, all there.
It's all there. It's an ancient model, but incredibly relevant for building lasting influence today.
That integration of the spiritual foundation with the practical operational architecture really is compelling. It moves beyond just strategy or just piety. It connects them.
It has to.
Okay, so drawing from the source material's own reflective prompts, maybe we can leave our listeners with this final, quite provocative question to ponder. If you had to leave your current role, your organization, your sphere of influence in 2 years, what would be left that could continue, that could thrive without you?
That really focuses the mind, doesn't it?
It forces you to think about legacy not as your own reputation, but as the durable systems, the empowered people, the embedded values you leave behind.
Exactly. What have you built that truly multiplies beyond yourself?